Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, ungodly, unworkable and illegal are just a few of the scathing terms used by leading figures to describe the Home Office's new Rwanda Asylum scheme that the UK government says will curb human trafficking. Doris Wikesia-Pickard, Chief Technical Advisor to the Rwandan Minister of Justice, will be joining me from Kigali to provide an official response to the growing backlash. And today is Earth Day, an occasion where 1 billion people will take time to focus on the planet's environmental issues. Andrew Olmack, the founder of Plastics for Change, will be joining me from Paris to talk about why the issue of plastic pollution must be tackled. Then later, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business stories of the week. But first, let's have a look at the story that's once again dominating headlines here in the UK. Partygate. Yesterday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson embarked upon a trade visit to India, while MPs back at home debated his political future. The Conservative Party leader apologised to the House of Commons for a fine he received by police for breaking lockdown orders, saying he did not know a birthday gathering at the height of the pandemic breached the guidelines that he himself had set.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government recognises the seriousness of the issues under consideration, and can I say this at the outset? The Prime Minister has always been clear that he is happy to face whatever inquiries Parliament sees fit, and he's happy for the House to decide how it wishes to proceed today, and therefore will not be whipping Conservative members of Parliament. They are free to vote according to how they believe we should move forward on this. Now, we tabled an amendment last night because we wanted to be explicit about ensuring that Sue Gray is able to complete and publish her report without any further delay, as well as allow the Metropolitan Police to conclude their investigations. We now recognise that in practice this is almost certainly likely to be the case, and therefore we are happy for the Labour motion to go through, if that is the will of the House.
Well, earlier I spoke with our business correspondent Simon Pusey for some analysis. Simon, so the Easter recess is over. No surprising that this week the Palace of Westminster has been dominated with Partygate debate and discussion.
Yeah, so let's reset and go back to when this began. It was December when these revelations and these photos came out about parties that had happened during lockdown. On the 1st of December, on the 18th of December, Boris told the House of Commons that all guidance was followed completely by Number 10. On the record. Exactly. But then Sue Gray started an inquiry because Boris wanted to sort of shift attention away and wanted it to look like, you know, that there was due process being followed. And then the Met Police opened an investigation, and Boris Johnson, his wife Carrie Simons, and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak were all fined. And here we find ourselves in a position where Boris Johnson said all guidance was followed on the record in the House of Parliament. And then the police have fined him for breaking the law, the first and only sitting Prime Minister to have ever been fined for breaking the law. And then addressing MPs earlier this week, he apologised for his mistake 35 times during the course of that sitting. And now we've got opposition parties saying that he should resign. We've got Sir Keir Starmer.
Which he's not going to, is he?
He's not. He said he wants to get on with the job in hand. He's talking a lot about Russia and Ukraine. He's talking about the cost of living crisis. He says that's what's more important at the moment. But Sir Keir Starmer, Labour leader, accusing him of offering absurd excuses, talking about how shameless he is. Lots of personal attacks on him, and the SNP's Ian Blackford saying if he has any decency and dignity, he would apologise. He wouldn't just apologise, which he has done 35 times in that sitting, but he would also resign. And so here we are. And I think the problem is that because time is such a good healer, there's not quite the anger that there was a couple of months ago before the Ukraine war. Boris Johnson's come out of the Ukraine war quite well, so I think Conservative MPs are looking at their constituents and thinking, well, there's not the same kind of levels of anger that there were those months ago. And I think any kind of vote that may happen to force some kind of judgment on him is likely to probably go the Conservative way. They probably do have the numbers because they have such a big majority. And I think a lot of Conservative MPs are looking forward to future general elections and thinking, well, I'm only really here because people voted for Boris because he's popular around the country. So, you know, it's quite hard for the other parties to try and force this issue because the only way, as he's not going to resign, the only way to get rid of him is for there to be a vote and for Conservative MPs to decide to ditch him. And I think at the moment that's not going to be the case. But we will see. This is moving so fast, and there's probably more evidence out there, and there's probably more to come, which could again stoke kind of anger amongst the electorate. But I think at the moment Boris Johnson is fairly secure in the sense that he's dealt well with, you know, the Ukraine crisis according to polls, and people I think around the country are probably kind of getting over this.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Do people care? Because let's not forget, over 100,000 people died. You know, COVID and the lockdowns affected everybody. How is it resonating with the public? Are they just sick to the back teeth of Partygate?
I think probably there's two schools of thought. I think people who are affected, as you say, and lost loved ones, or you know, they will be angry. Of course, they will be angry. But because this has taken so long, I think that initial anger may have subsided, and I think you'll then get another sort of set of people who are not within the Westminster bubble, who are living across the UK, that will be just like, you know, Boris Johnson is an amiable fellow. He comes across quite well. He likes a drink. You know, he seems like one of us. And then you look at Keir Starmer, who seems a bit sort of more straight-laced and legal and a little bit, you know, out of touch maybe sometimes, whereas Boris just seems like a man of the people. So, you know, and everyone calls him Boris, for example. Like, that didn't happen before. You wouldn't call David Cameron David. He just has that kind of, exactly, he has that kind of
appeal.
Yeah, so I think it's hard to say. It's such a fast-moving story, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think at the moment, any kind of vote, the Conservatives will probably take it.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Again, thank you, Simon. The former Prime Minister Theresa May has become the latest high-profile figure to clash with Home Secretary Priti Patel over the UK government's Rwanda Asylum policy, questioning the removal scheme's legality, practicality and efficacy. The controversial deal with Rwanda, announced last week, will see asylum seekers who arrive in the UK in lorries or by small boats across the Channel placed on one-way flights to the East African country, where they'll be given an opportunity to start a new life. One Tory MP said the cost for sending people to Rwanda would be eye-watering. Doris Wikesia-Picard, the Chief Technical Advisor to the Rwandan Minister of Justice, joins me now from Kigali for more on this. Doris Wikesia-Picard, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. I thank you because I can only imagine how busy you've been. Firstly, I'd like to hear your response to the strong criticism that has been reflected in the UK against this new refugee scheme. Two big statements, one from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who described these new plans as ungodly. He said that during a speech he gave on Easter Sunday. And then we've had our former Prime Minister, the former Home Secretary, Theresa May, questioning the legality, morality and ethics. Have you been surprised by the strong criticism?
Well, it's not, yes, we have, not really, but the current situation where people are making these dangerous journeys over land and sea, and it's causing countless untold sufferings of men, women, and children dying, and or placing their hands their lives in the hands of people smugglers, while seeking safety and opportunity in a new country. We believe there is a moral imperative to act urgently to break this cycle of violence and suffering inflicted upon migrants and asylum seekers. Rwanda wants to play its part in addressing this issue and breaking this cycle. Our track record over the past 2 decades demonstrate that Rwanda is one of the safest places for refugees. It is consistently ranked as one of the safest countries in the world. We currently host about 130,000 refugees from all over the world. We have experience in partnering, entering into agreements with international partners to address the global migration crisis. Recently, we partnered with UNHCR, the European Union, and Libya to evacuate migrants and asylum seekers that were trapped in Libya. And they've been evacuated here and have been provided with safety and opportunities within the country. So we believe this bold new approach will addresses the cause roots of this migration while providing opportunities to migrants.
Okay, well,
this is right.
Sorry to interject there, Doris. We'll get to Rwanda's colourful human rights record in a moment. But I want to hear how this is going to work and how it's going to benefit Rwanda. You spoke a lot about how it's going to benefit perhaps, or stop, shall I say, human trafficking gangs. Yvette Cooper, she's the Shadow Home Secretary. She sits opposite Priti Patel. She said the plans are unworkable. Tell us how it will work.
Well, I am I was as a key part of the team that negotiated this partnership. We are confident that it will be successfully implemented. We worked meticulously over the details to ensure that this plan will benefit those coming into Rwanda as migrants and asylum seekers and Rwandans themselves. Rwandan people are very welcoming, and we welcome a diverse society. We acknowledge the value that migrants and asylum seekers bring to a society in terms of a diversity of skills. We also believe that we have a moral obligation to help those in need of our help. There is also a core component of this partnership is a financial investment from the UK into Rwanda, which will be used to further develop our country and provide opportunities for the migrants and to help them integrate and better integrate society.
Okay, I think, Doris, it appears to be that a lot of these campaign organisations, groups such as Amnesty International and other charities are saying that, unfortunately, the migrants won't want to go to Rwanda. If we're talking about the people that cross over from Calais into Dover, they're predominantly from Iran, Iraq, Syria. Culturally, are they going to fit into Rwanda? I want you to answer that. But also, I do want to talk about what's been dominating the British press here, not the African press, I've got to say, the British press. They've spoken about the horrors of the genocide. I don't need to go into detail of that to you because you're a Rwandan in Rwanda. That would be really arrogant of me. But there are also other human rights concerns, particularly with the LGBTQ plus community. That's been brought up a lot in a British Parliament. Do you think it's fair that a lot of the headlines in the UK are discussing this? The fact that who wants to go to Rwanda? Nobody. And Rwanda isn't safe because of the history of the genocide in your country?
I think it is precisely because of our history that we are one of the best placed countries to receive those migrants. We have a deep connection. We feel, all Rwandans feel a connection to people seeking refuge and vulnerable people seeking refuge from conflict and other hardships. We have all been refugees. And over the past 2 decades, Rwanda has transformed. Rwanda's transformation is nothing short of miraculous in all spheres of society. Our economic development outpaces much of the world. In terms of gender equality, we have more women in leadership positions in parliament than anywhere else in the world. We, Rwandans, have worked very hard at our unity. We are united more than ever. We are ready to receive and welcome people seeking asylum and offer them dignified and safe lives full of opportunities within our societies. And a big part of this deal, of this migrant partnership with the UK, was acknowledging that there are going to be aspects of integration into society that needs to be carefully prepared. So we have in place programs of integration. We will be providing language programs to integrate them in society, where they will learn the language, they will learn the country, history, culture, and they will be fully integrated. And we welcome this diversity of culture that they will bring in our country.
Okay, well, I know that the scheme is currently going through the courts. Some believe it won't happen. I'm sure Rwanda are hoping it does. We'll just have to wait and see, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show again when you can tell us how these refugees have been settled into Rwandan society. Doris Wekeza-Pickard, the Chief Technical Advisor to the Rwandan Minister of Justice. Thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global today. Coming up on Channel's Business Global, Andrew Ormack, the founder of Plastics for Change, will be joining me from Paris to highlight the issues of plastic pollution on today, Earth Day. And I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business stories of the week. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a moment, I'll be joined by the founder of Plastics for Change, Andrew Ormack. But before then, here's some business news for you. China's economy expanded faster than expected in the first quarter, but official data reveals consumer activity has begun to slow down due to COVID lockdowns in parts of the country. Q1 GDP rose by 4.8%, topping expectations of a 4.4% increase. Last month, China struggled to contain its worst COVID outbreak since the initial phase of the pandemic in 2020. March retail sales fell 3.5% from a year earlier. Netflix shares plummeted 26% earlier this week after the streaming giant lost 200,000 subscribers in the first 3 months of the year, far below Wall Street expectations that it would gain 2.5 million subscribers. Bosses have said they plan to clamp down on password sharing and introduce a subscription model with adverts, which would end its long-held reputation as an advert-free haven for TV watchers. Netflix estimates that besides its almost 222 million paying households, the service is being shared with an additional 100 million homes. JustEatTakeaway.com said it's considering a partial or full sale of its Grubhub unit, just a year after it purchased the group for $7.3 billion. The European food delivery giant has faced growing calls from prominent shareholders to divest its Grubhub division, as the company has lost more than 2/3 of its market value in the past 12 months. Consumer habits are changing after 2 years of intermittent pandemic shutdowns, with demand for online food delivery, streaming services and home fitness machines on the wane. JustEatTakeaway.com shares rose about 3% following that announcement. Tesla eclipsed expectations on Wall Street on Wednesday after reporting an 81% rise in revenue and its highest ever profits in the first 3 months of the year. Between January and March, revenue came in at $18.67 billion, with adjusted earnings of $5 billion. The electric car firm has a market value of more than $1 trillion and was established in 2003 by billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk. Musk, the world's richest man, is in line to receive stock awards worth more than $23 billion in this financial year. Amazon will allow other online merchants the use of its Prime service system to deliver goods quickly to customers. Buy with Prime will provide American-based third-party merchants access to the online tech giant's vast shipping and logistics network at a limited cost. On other websites, Prime members will now see the Prime logo and delivery promise option on eligible products. The ultra-fast delivery service has more than 200 million paid members around the world. Now to our final topic. Every year, Earth Day offers people around the world a chance to focus on the planet and the significant challenges facing it. It has been estimated that 1 billion people will mark today's environmental holiday, and plastic pollution is one of the many pressing issues that campaigners across the world are asking world leaders to tackle. The use of plastics has increased 20-fold in the past 50 years, and over 3 billion people lack access to formal waste management.
Nous sommes en train de travailler dans la ville de Bukavu où jadis il n'y avait aucun système de gestion des déchets préétabli et nous sommes en train de contribuer pour qu'on puisse implanter un bon système de gestion des déchets, contribuer à rendre propre et assainir la ville de Bukavu en premier lieu et assainir les lacs et la ville en deuxième lieu.
Andrew Ulmak is the founder of Plastics for Change, and he joins me now from Paris for more on this. Andrew Ulmak, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Now, if we live in the global north, I think you are aware of what plastic pollution is all about. I think most of us are using paper straws or cardboard straws and cardboard bags when you do your shopping. But this awareness doesn't appear to have been translated to the global south. Why is that?
I don't know if it's so much about awareness as it is about the state of development of the recycling infrastructure. So I think the biggest difference between the global north and the global south is that generally in the global north, there's waste management collection services. Most households have somebody paid from their municipality to collect their waste. Whereas in emerging economies, there's less waste collection services. In fact, most of the recycling activities are happening in the informal waste economy, where there's a network of people at the base of the supply chain picking it up, and they're not funded by the local municipalities. They're entrepreneurs that are going and creating their livelihoods by picking up these discarded plastics, and they're the primary force for the recycling activities.
Absolutely, not just these aid kind of groups. I was telling you off air that if you are growing up in an African home, typically you are recycling your own plastic. But then, as you said, there is just not that infrastructure to collect it and take it away and reuse it. And I'm sure that's part of the reason why Plastic for Change has been set up. I can see that you're being hosted by Garnier, which is a huge global French cosmetic group. Can you talk to me about your new partnership with them and what you're seeking to achieve?
Yeah, so when we reached out to Garnier, we really recognized this issue of plastic waste in emerging economies and the opportunity to improve the lives of those at the base of the supply chain, to improve the lives of the informal waste workers and waste collectors. So we embarked on the partnership to do exactly that, and to look at to changing lives through recycling. So providing access to the things that the folks at the base of the supply chain need to create that social impact, and to use plastic recycling as a means to reduce poverty.
Absolutely, and I know that people have been doing that already. We know that Earth Day is a huge, some would call it a protest, some would call it an event. I think there's estimates that about 1 billion people are going to be marking it across the world. What are you hoping will be achieved this year?
I hope that on this Earth Day, it's really a chance for humanity to reflect on just how precious our planet is, and how connected we all are on this very fragile planet. And I hope it's a day that we can all recognize how we can contribute to a more sustainable future.
Absolutely, and I know that Plastic for Change, Andrew, has done extensive work across Asia. Can you tell us before you go about some of the work you're conducting on the African continent?
We are exploring we want to expand into Africa. In the years to come, we recognize it as a huge opportunity with such a growing economy, and the opportunity to help accelerate recycling infrastructure. So have to stay tuned as we look to launch our expansion there in the future.
Absolutely, I'll be staying tuned, and hopefully we'll be talking to you again, not from Paris, but perhaps from Lagos or Abuja in Nigeria. Andrew Ulmak, founder of Plastics for Change. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.